Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this UK Focus at Waves 2020, the 10th anniversary of Waves, and what a special one it is in many ways. Anyway, so I've been delighted to be asked to chair and moderate this panel. My name's Ian Smith from Fusion, Fission and UK Europe Arts Work Info. Something to say before we do this focus panel. No doubt Brexit may come up, but we've got another panel more or less after this panel on the same streaming platform. So if you want to check about Brexit, please try not to talk about it too much here and now, because we're going to deal with that later. Obviously, it may come up. UK is still a vibrant scene and was likely to be for many years. And as Mark Geiger, formerly of WME Global, said recently, if we can all hang on, then we're looking at the new roaring 20s, apparently. I'm sure the panel are going to have words to say on that. So I'm going to do a very quick introduction. And if each of you guys would like to do a little wave when I mention your name, and then I'm going to pass back, and then you can introduce yourselves more fully. So we've got Chris Tams from BPI, British Recorded Music Industry. Yeah, there's Chris. We've got Anastasia Connor from Noise Unit PR. There you go. Neil Thompson from Focus Wales. There you go. Sadly, Adam Ryan from The Great Escape and More isn't online at the moment. He may come back later, but we've also got Michael Lambert from Wild Days. Yeah, there you go. So before any more that I'm going to be saying for now, if I'd like to start off and introduce Chris Tams, who will now give a talk about his sector of the industry in the UK. Here you go, Chris.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen with you, so hopefully you will all be able to see this presentation. Let me make that big for you. Right. Hi there. So my name is Chris Tams. I'm the Director of Independent Membership and International at the BPI. The BPI is the trade association for record labels in the UK. We represent roughly about 90% of recorded music in the UK. And I'm just going to give you a few slides on sort of the first half of the UK music industry, give you an idea about how it shapes up, and also a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on the UK market. So just to provide a bit of an update on where the market sort of was sort of COVID period, it's not difficult to see the impact of lockdown on physical sales. That's obviously the black line at the top, with the grey line being CD and the orange being LP. Physical sales were down by about 40% in the earlier part of lockdown, a bit less on LP and a bit more on CD. But since stores have started reopening, and obviously initiatives like Record Store Day, LP sales are running at a higher level now than pre-lockdown. And the trajectory of CD is actually encouraging. The weekly total passed 300,000 units for the first time since lockdown about week 24, and they've roughly risen to about 370,000 since then. So although things are looking a bit more positive than they were sort of at the early part of lockdown, we may not be entirely out of the woods just yet, and a lot of sales have been lost in the past 3 months. The streaming market has been much less volatile. Took a little bit of a hit on lockdown. You can see it around week 12, but is now pre-COVID levels now. And it looks like people's listening adjusted after their commuting routine was disrupted.
Excuse me, I'm interrupting. Can the others please mute their microphones for the presentation, and don't forget to switch them on afterwards, please. Thank you.
There we go. That's a lot better. So apologies if you missed any of that. So obviously, as we said, people's listening adjusted after their commuting routine was disrupted, but obviously they've been maybe a little bit more interested in news immediately after lockdown than music. You can see there was a dip around about week 24 as well. The only reason we can really say about that is probably a poor week for new releases. And now obviously the total streams have recovered to just shy of about 3 billion. Digital purchasing has been declining in recent years across the industry, but in lockdown it actually recovered somewhat, which was quite strange, with both digital track and album sales reaching new highs for the year. Clearly there was some substitution for physical purchasing going on, obviously with lockdown, people not being able to get to shops. And the tracks market benefited from the release of some charity singles in the middle of lockdown, but in recent weeks sales have again been generally heading downwards. Looking at the market as a whole, we can see album equivalent sales, and album equivalent sales is essentially a method of calculating all sales to include streams of video streams. So roughly 1,000 premium streams and 6,000 ad-supported streams equal one sale. We can almost see they're up by about 7% for the first 6 months of the year, which was a little bit less than it was at the stage last year when it was about 9%. But bearing in mind what we've seen in the physical market, it's still pretty good news, and the effect of the drag on declining physical market is being reduced as streaming tends to be taking a lot more market share. Just a little bit about independents. Roughly, independents in the UK have always been around a 25% market share, but obviously, as you can see from here, they've had a really good start to the first half of the year. The shares increased across all formats, with the exception of LP, where there was a small downturn. But we think that was mostly due to sort of big heritage artists releasing, with new releases on vinyl, and maybe some repressings of older releases. And the biggest gains are in CD and download albums, where the increases were 4.5% and about 4.2% respectively. And some of this may have been down to a few releases being delayed as schedules chopped and changed during lockdown. A little bit on genre analysis. It might be a bit difficult to see clearly, so I do apologise for that. But we have streams from that genre, look at streams by genre from roughly about week 10 to 26. All genres were indexed at 100 a week. You can see which have done better since then. And the thick red dotted line is all audio streams. The two genres which have underperformed compared to the market, the two biggest ones, so pop and hip hop, which are the green and orange lines at the bottom, whilst the other genres that do well are country. That's the light blue line at the top, which peaks at about week 13, which we can probably put down to the unfortunate death of Kenny Rogers. Middle of the road, which is the purple line, which peaks in week 20. A number of reasons for that, but maybe to do with celebrations about the end of the Second World War. Dance music has done very well. The green line, in which the highest week's 22, the right side of the graph. We probably liken that to a lot more people taking on home exercise routines that involve dance music. A little simpler way of looking at this genre data was to look at some of these graphs. Reggae was the biggest winner proportionally, perhaps due to the weather during the early part of lockdown, which especially in the UK was particularly unseasonably warm, and also the ongoing publicity about what would probably be Bob Marley's 75th birthday. It's possible that genres such as classical, new age, and jazz have benefited from people looking for a relatively unobtrusive soundtrack to their working day. Obviously, for middle of the road, perhaps this is the function of listening becoming a bit more communal in home for a lot of households. Music from albums such as The Greatest Showman, for example, have done very, very well during lockdown. As you may have heard from a release BPI put out earlier this year, label revenue passed £1 billion in 2019, an increase of about 7.6%. This is the highest total since 2006. It represented the 5th consecutive year of growth, and this continued into the first quarter of this year when revenues rose by almost 10%. This is a breakdown of revenues in 2019, according to the revenue source. Obviously, several of the revenue streams are under threat. The first one, obviously, is performance royalty income, which will be hit hard this year for obvious reasons. No festivals, very, very few gigs. And obviously also the public places that pay public performance licenses, such as shopping centres, pubs, etc., have all had limited methods of opening, if none at all. Synchronisation obviously may be hit with problems such as there are fewer programmes and films in production, although we are hearing from our colleagues now in the sync world that this is starting to become back to some kind of pre-COVID levels of new release films and games and TV. As we've seen, physical is suffering. The revenue streams are also come under threat. For instance, record labels who share in their artists' live earnings and merch sales. But at the moment, the evidence must be largely anecdotally is that subscriptions are proving to be very resilient and may even overtake that downturn in other parts of the industry. So just quickly to sort of summarise on these, the streaming market appears to be in good shape and the physical market is recovering. Hopefully, as more shops will open, this will continue as lockdown continues to be less restrictive. catalogue is actually taking a greater share of listening and sales. People have been turning to familiar music during lockdown, and the release schedule has been disrupted. With the third-party forecast, we've seen expect a severe downturn in the broader industry driven by an expected 75% contraction in live revenues, but both predict a year of positive growth for the recorded sector in terms of sales and streams. And in terms of consumer confidence, around a quarter of households are worried about their situation, but there does seem to be enthusiasm to return to shops and venues in the UK, and this seems to have been borne out from stories in retail centres over the past few weeks. Thanks very much for listening to that. There's quite a lot of facts and figures, but obviously if everybody wants to contact me, there are my contact details if they want any particular parts of that. So I'll just stop sharing my screen now. And hopefully that will work.
Thanks very much, Chris. Nice presentation. A lot of facts and figures, as people can no doubt see. And I'll bring it back round later at the end of the introductions by everybody for any questions. It's particularly interesting, the genres and the way they've been impacted, and particularly pop on a minus down stream, it appears. Anyway, so thanks a lot. That was Chris Tams from British Recorded Music Industry. And now I'd like to introduce, once again, Anastasia from Noise Unit PR. If you'd like to say a little bit about your sector and yourself, Anastasia. Thank you.
Hi there. Hi. So I'm Anastasia, and I run a PR agency called Noise Unit. So I work with music exports and showcases and field festivals, as well as artists and mostly independent artists. And, you know, in terms of impact, you know, obviously, you know, having some festival clients, you know, I felt the immediate impact, you know, right at the very start of the lockdown, you know, in about March time. And that's obviously continued and is likely to continue further, although, you know, some events have gone online, you know, including Focus Wales and the kind of new format Out of Focus. I'm sure Neil will tell you more about it. So there have been some developments, you know, but with kind of the actual physical events, only one of my clients, you know, did actually, Italian Music Week did go ahead. There was kind of a dip initially for the first couple of months in terms of releases in April, May, but then things picked up. And I would say, you know, we're facing a really, really busy autumn with a lot of releases, you know, from like, new artists and established artists. So though people are not able to tour, you know, people are still releasing music. Yeah, showcases, obviously, you know, it's a big part of what I do, and they were quite adversely affected because, you know, the new emerging musicians, you know, were the people who were probably most affected by the pandemic, you know, in terms of promotion and support for new music. Showcases are absolutely vital, and yet they could only kind of do online things. You know, things are changing. You know, obviously here, example itself in Vienna, and all the European partners, things, you know, have gone online. Or as in Tallinn, it was a hybrid blended model. You know, where they actually had socially distant gigs. And had some international presence there, both in terms of the artists and the delegates, you know, and had some, you know, digital panels as well. So that's the sort of general situation. You know, there was a dip, but things are kind of turning around. But in terms of the media, there have been significant changes. I would say that a lot of the changes were kind of in the pipeline already, you know, with certain kind of legacy media and print media struggling. The more of a kind of millennial inclined media survived better. They had much stronger digital presence, both on social media and the websites. You know, a lot of the print media had to kind of drop print, you know, put it on hiatus. We've seen some really successful subscription models emerging, again, for more established publications like Crack Magazine, you know, and The Quietus, who already had a very strong presence and, you know, a lot of following. And now, you know, they've finally gone ahead with their subscription, which sort of replaced what they had in terms of the festival and showcase impact. So yeah, that's the sort of the general picture. I'm even aware of a couple of new magazines starting. When it comes to more regional media. During a lockdown, there was a desperate kind of need, I think, for local trusted voices, and those publications like Bidolita in Liverpool or the Skinny in Scotland, did really well out of fundraisers and kind of paved the way for their survival for the next few months at least, and restarted them. That's the gist of where we are, and I can see we've got Adam's just joined us. Hello, Adam.
Yeah, welcome, Adam. Good to see you there.
Hello, thank you.
We'll come
I
back.
am able to use a computer.
As do we all these days, do we all. We'll come back to Adam shortly. So back to Anastasia. Anything more to say, Anastasia?
No, I'll wait for the questions, I think. I just wanted to give you a brief kind of breakdown of where we are.
Okay, wait for the storm to arrive. Okay, I'm now going to bring on board Michael from Wild Days. If you'd like to talk a little bit about your sector and where you're coming from, Michael, and then afterwards we'll welcome Adam Ryan. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Lambert. The event I run is actually called Wide Days. We're not particularly wild, but we are quite wide, which in Scotland is a term that means cheeky. So yeah, as Ian mentioned, my name is Michael. I run a music industry conference and showcase event called Wide Days, which takes place every April normally, and has done for the last 10 years. This year was our 11th edition, and we ran it completely virtually in July. We had originally postponed the event from April until July, when we perhaps naively thought that all of this was going to be long and over by then. So we decided, rather than kind of cancelling the event for this year or postponing it any further, that we would just take the whole conference online, which worked really well for us, and felt pretty timely to be able to create a bit of a forum for people to figure out and navigate this kind of issue this year. So we managed to get 360 delegates to the conference from 25 different countries. Which was amazing, and was great for our event, which is a pretty small music industry event that's very focused around networking. It was great for us to be able to open the doors to people from other countries who maybe haven't been able to attend in person before. On the showcase side of things with Wide Days, we focus maybe slightly differently from a lot of other events. We focus on a very small number of artists based in Scotland, and we work with them for a few months to kind of essentially get them ready to showcase to the industry. This year, we ran a program from March through to July with 7 artists who all performed in a sort of closed doors venue, and we broadcast as a live show on YouTube for the industry and for public audiences as well. And in addition to the Wide Days conference, I also run a music management company. We represent 7 clients, 6 of whom are based in Scotland and the others based in the north of England. Sort of ranging from a couple of pretty new developing artists through to a band called Idlewild, who've got a 25-year career, and a guitar band called Father Son, who just prior to lockdown had toured Europe with Lewis Capaldi. So in terms of my management hat, I work with artists from the very beginning through to more established acts.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Nice one. So we'll open you up to questions shortly. And now we're going to bring in, sorry, Michael, Adam. I'm getting confused myself looking at the screen and trying to remember who's in and who isn't. So I'd like to introduce now Adam Ryan, who apart from The Great Escape does a great deal of many other things. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Adam, and then talk about your side of the sector and where you think things are and where they may be going.
Yes, so can you hear me? Yeah, great.
Yeah, all good, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. I seem to have lost the ability to use a computer there this morning. So I work on the Great Escape Festival. The Great Escape is actually a 4-day event down on the south coast of the UK in a tiny town called Brighton. we have about 500 artists perform from around the globe each year, and we're predominantly a showcase discovery event. It's all about new music. I mean, how you quantify that, I guess it's up to me. But a lot of it is emerging talent. It's very new acts that are ready to showcase from around the world. But we do have about 10 or 20% returning artists. So we will do bigger shows for I guess people like Bastille, Cribs, Johnny Marr, Paul Weller, people like that have got new material out. But predominantly we're a showcase event, and it's all about discovering new music. We have a conference that runs parallel to that, which is across 3 days. Each day has a different topic that we focus on. Maybe some of the other showcase events will have a conference and maybe approach it in a bit more of a scattergun way, like kind of touch on multiple topics. But we very much stick to 3 topics, different topic each day, and at the end of the day we try and have a bit of a conclusion, a bit of an action plan, a bit of a way to move forward. Sometimes I think that other conferences you can have a panel on diversity with like 3 or 4 people one year, and then the next year they're back in the same room talking about diversity and how they can change the industry, and nothing ever really gets done. So we really try and focus on a topic and come to some sort of resolution or conclusion. But my job is head of music, and I kind of program that. Obviously, we had to cancel this year due to COVID, which is a bit of a shame. But obviously, pandemics aren't the time to be showcasing new music. It's kind of the time to be staying indoors and isolating. But we're raring and ready to go for next year. We've got our dates held and announced for May. We might have some backup dates for October, September time, just in case, because obviously nothing's a certainty in these times. We do a live launch of our event in November. I think we're one of the only festivals that has a live launch. So in November, we normally announce 50 artists that make up the first announcement of The Great Escape, and we showcase them, or we previously have showcased them in London. And obviously, we can't do that this year because of COVID, but we are in talks with the Brighton Council to look at a way that we could do a full capacity show in Brighton to coincide with our launch, and look to maybe, whereas in the past we've done 2 days in 5 venues to showcase our first announcement as a sort of shop window in London to entice new customers. This year we might hopefully do 2 nights in 1 venue, full capacity, where everybody gets tested beforehand. I think it's really important for us to show the government how to do things. I think the government haven't got a clue what they're doing, and they really need our guidance as experts in the industry, not just me, like everybody on this call, to show them what to do and to show them how to do it. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment, which is really exciting. Yeah. And that's me.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Appreciate that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open this up for questions in the room, if that's possible. I'm not sure if is there a microphone available? Yeah. Also, what I'd encourage you guys to do is, when I say talk amongst yourselves, I don't mean whilst we're asking questions. I mean, you guys ask each other questions and please jump in. But just make sure if you've muted your mic to unmute it before you start talking. So before any more ado, is there anybody in the room that would like to ask a question? If so, look interested or put your hand up or both. Not yet. It's early. I know it's really early and probably most people
Is there only, there's only 3 people in that room, isn't there?
Yeah, those are the ones you can see. There's actually around 100 behind
Thousands
there.
at the back.
Yeah, they're all crammed in the back, and definitely not socially distancing, but they're all in the cubicle smoking. I'm lying. We have a question from... Okay. Did I? Neil. Oh, mate. I was saying, but he's so quiet and so polite. Neil, you should have jumped in and jumped down my throat. Of course, Neil. This is Neil Thompson of Focus Wales. Please, Neil, give sway.
Thanks.
I'm terribly sorry.
I figured you just heard enough about Wales and just thought, you know, let's skip that.
No, let's not go there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, if you want to get to the questions as well, I won't take up too much time then in that case, but it's obviously do a very similar thing to Adam and Michael. I'm a co-founder of an event called Focus Wales, which is a music industry showcase event based in Wales, which is representative of the whole nation of Wales, I guess. So, so at the sort of the core of it, it's about showcasing new Welsh talent, but then there's sort of a couple of layers that we build on top of that. So there's a conference as well. It's very similar. So we have a set of music industry delegates that attend to watch the bands and also take part in panel discussions and so on and so forth. And we try and make those as practical and as useful for the people in the audience as possible, because a lot of our audience is, you know, the sort of Welsh industry, which is a lot of DIY, you know, musicians basically, you know, self-managing artists, all that kind of thing, you know. So we do try and make our conference practical and sort of immediately useful in that sense. And then the other layer would be our sort of international layer. So as well as doing the showcase festival, well, as well as usually doing the showcase festival at home, we also showcase artists as Focus Wales abroad. So mainly, so we run the Wales stage, which is a Focus Wales stage at South by Southwest, usually when that takes place. And then we also showcase artists at events like Lookfest in Taiwan, M for Montreal, Breakout West, also in Canada, that moves around Canada, and various other sort of bits and bobs internationally that we pop up at. We're showcasing here as well. We've got some Welsh artists playing Waves this year, which is pretty cool, part of the UK sort of.
Hello?
I imagine in the things that sort of things we're going to talk about today is, you know, as Adam and Michael point out, we're not doing the events that we'd normally do when we'd normally do them, and our event is moved to October next year, so that's very, you know, definitely very far down the line, and it's given us a lot of time and space to think about what we want to do in the meantime. Obviously we've you know, I think pivot is the word that everyone's been using lately, isn't it? So we've sort of pivoted what we normally do, and we're now presenting a sort of an online showcase an online conference starting from the 21st of September, which will have an element of music to it at the end, but it's mainly an online, you know, conference, interactive conference really. So we want to make it as useful as possible for all the people who would have missed out on our live experience. So, you know, they get the opportunity to take part in panels like this and network and ask questions. And really what we wanted to do, it's first of a series of ones we wanted to do there, because we wanted to do a little bit of intervening in the, you know, sort of, obviously everyone's having a difficult time, and what we wanted to do is provide a bit of a platform and a place where people could, the music industry of Wales could come together and, you know, find out what kind of help is available, you know, hear some other stories, maybe make some useful connections, and you know, a sort of a way to bring everybody together with the spirit of helping each other out. And that obviously includes a lot of the usual kind of partners like PRS, PPL, etc., that we usually present panels with and so on, in that same kind of spirit. And then as well, I think, and again, an interesting thing that Adam mentioned there was that kind of the desire to return to, the sort of full capacity shows, which is obviously where we need to be, because, this live industry doesn't work unless it's working like that at its full capacity, isn't it? I mean, and mitigating measures are a route map to return into that. I think they're not a solution in the long term. So we're also involved a little bit more with influencing policy and things like that, and trying to sort of provide the guidance for our respective kind of governments, or the people in the government who are responsible for facilitating the return to live performance. So again, it's great that we're being consulted and we're involved in those kinds of conversations with the Welsh government in terms of creating a route map to the return to live events. And I think it seems to be the same across the board, that the sector is being taken seriously and consulted and being asked how that should be done, which is good. So and so across the nations, I think that seems to be a thing that's happening. So that's a positive, if you ask me. But yeah, okay. So I said I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but that's pretty much where we're at with Focus Wales at the moment.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Appreciate it. Sorry, you've got a slightly bad connection, so if we lose you at all during the stream, we may hold for a second just to get back to you. Just go back, anybody, any questions in the room? There are actually, for anybody watching out there, there are more than 3 people in the room. We've got a rapt audience right in front of us right now. I can, as my hand on heart, it's true, including the crew as well, who are doing a great job. So anybody got any questions? I have, but that's me. I had a chance to write them down. Anybody, any questions at the moment? Okay, guys, I'm going to open this up to all 5 of you. And I'll also bounce it back if anybody jumps in. We've obviously spoken a lot about coronavirus and the impact on the UK scene, as it has been across the world. And it's been really good to hear some of the things you guys have said. Really interesting from you, Adam, about the virus passport. I know that had been mooted in the last week or two about potential return to live events if you have a passport saying that you have passed a COVID test. Who knows whether that's going to work or not in the long term, but it's a great idea in the short term. So what I wanted to ask you guys is, how do you see, well, also this relates specifically, of course, because we're talking to an international audience, including a lot of artists who would love to come and play in the UK. So how do you see performance opportunities changing and developing since this COVID sort of reset, reboot? How do you see that going? Stunned silence. Anybody?
Well, how do you see? Well, obviously we can't really do gigs indoors at the moment. I mean, I don't know. There's an artist called Olivia Dean. She has purchased a van and spray painted it up, and sounds a lot more exciting than I've described it. But she's driving that around the country, and when she opens up the back of the van, her band are in there, and she can perform to live audiences, and in car parks or places around the UK. I'm sure she wouldn't really have done that without the COVID virus coming along. I think people have to get a little bit more imaginative. I mean, I'm sick to the back teeth of watching people perform in bedrooms, but I think it's still early days and the technology is not quite there. But Laura Marling playing at Union Chapel. I think the Mercury's maybe are doing something at Bush Hall. So there's some exciting things coming out there to showcase and for live artists to perform. But I just think it's still in its infancy.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Do you think anybody think there are any positives that have come out of this situation?
I mean, we've certainly found, without trying to be too positive about it, we've certainly found that there have been many new things that have kind of come our way that wouldn't have happened had it not been for the pandemic. And as Adam's mentioning, there's no real clear route at the minute for live performance, and especially international live performance. So with my management hat on, we're being very cautious about routing tours in the near future, because the likeliness is that things are going to continue to change, and we're going to go in and out of local lockdowns and that kind of thing. So it makes it really hard to be organizing tours internationally. But in terms of the work that we do with Wide Days, a big part of what we're trying to do is get Scottish artists out into the world, and also bring new artists from other parts of the world into Scotland and help them build their career. So what we've been trying to do, and it's something that we were chatting to Neil and Andy at Focus Wales a lot about, is how can we still continue to do that kind of stuff without the actual live performance? Can we be helping artists to build a presence online in a different market, so that by the time they are able to go and perform, that they have a bit of an audience there, whether that be partnerships with Waves Vienna to showcase artists virtually, or whether it's around songwriting partnerships, remixes, collaborating with other artists over the internet. That doesn't have to be centered around performance necessarily, but means that artists can still build an audience and be relevant in that market by the time they are able to perform there again. And I think we're starting to see lots of different opportunities kind of popping up, that maybe when everybody had their heads down and were just out playing shows, those things wouldn't be happening. And as well as that, Adam's example there of the artist who's got a van and is out playing shows, we're seeing that with other artists. There's a band from London called Koala, who did a complete tour of the UK playing in parks and doing socially distanced shows. So people are doing interesting things that are also grabbing some headlines. And I think that the more that we start seeing people being a bit more creative, the more likeliness that people are going to be able to kind of pick up where they left off.
Yeah, thanks for that. Good points, well made. Anastasia, just from your perspective in PR and press, what's your view on, obviously, how open the UK has been for international artist touring, and how the change has impacted your role and the role of the press and media in bringing international artists to not only a wider audience, but also programmers' notice?
It kind of connects with to what Michael was saying. It's already been happening for a few months, and some of the platforms like the Line of Best Fit, I think, is the best example. Gigwise as well. Some of the better known ones were quite good at adapting very, very quickly, and either running their own festivals or allowing artists to perform as well. And we're talking about emerging artists there. So obviously, it's much easier if you've got an artist like Idlewild, for instance, who have a very, very established, not just media presence, but huge following as well, So, you get more opportunities there with Roddy Woomble, who's one of Michael's artists. We got a call, quite early on from Royal Albert Hall. They were running a program called Royal Albert Home, where the artists were kind of streaming for their audiences. It was a very good partnership. But for emerging artists, it's much more difficult. But more kind of the platforms that are oriented at younger audiences, they say Line of Best Fit is probably the best one. They've been championing a lot of artists, including international artists as well, and allowing kind of playing opportunities for them. So that's happened, and I can probably see it kind of carrying on and continuing for quite some time, this option, because it also allows media outlets, provides those kind of partnership opportunities, income streams for them, in the absence of showcases and festivals happening right now.
Thanks, Anastasia. Cool. Appreciate that. Anybody still any questions? No. Yes, we have a question. One moment, we'll get the microphone to you. And if it's, yeah, here we go. Just give us a moment and we'll get a mic over to you. If you could just say who you are and before you say the question, it is on its way, just here.
Hi, my name's David. I'm from the UK. I live in Berlin. I'm a songwriter, and I do some different things in music. I was based in Brighton for a few years. I just wanted to ask you guys, because I think it's all very apparent. People are looking for a resource of information. You know, you guys have got, you're being asked questions, but I just actually wanted to know, how are you coping with your own mental health through this time in this industry? My brother-in-law runs a venue, and it's been very difficult for him, you know, ongoing, trying to get finance to continue on with what they're doing. And I know you're all in different sectors. Some are kind of more correlative with probably the government, Scotland, Wales, I'm not really sure. But I just, yeah, perhaps on an individual level, how do you feel about moving forward, and have you coped with it?
I'll dive in there, if it's all right.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think mental health in this particular industry has been a massive issue anyway, hasn't it, for a long time? And I think it's good that, you know, we've finally just started to sort of accept that that's a reality, and that, you know, it's something that people take seriously now, isn't it, and take seriously in the workplace, and we can be a bit more open about it, and especially in these kind of scenarios, you know what I mean? And like, you know, the kind of the pressures that exist within this kind of world, and like, you know, not just the work pressures, but like the peer pressures and the kind of just the environments that you generally find yourselves in that can be, you know, alcohol heavy, can be, you know, extreme sort of lots of traveling, lots of frayed ends, you know, lots of like late nights, early mornings, that type of thing. All things that are utterly conducive to, like, you know, not being a happy functioning human being, I guess, isn't it? So I mean, I don't know, I think this is just add another dimension onto it, doesn't it? It's just like another factor onto the whole thing. I mean, you know, I mean, I think it's important to be very open about this kind of stuff. And I mean, like, personally, if you ask me that question directly, how do I deal with it? Well, I have therapy, so, which I need, and if I didn't have it, I'd find it very hard to do any of this stuff for various different reasons, you know. So, and I think that's important, and I think it's important to not, obviously, you know, I don't want to just say that because it's like, oh, I want you to think something about me, like, you know, you don't even know who I am. But what I mean is, it's important to be able to discuss things like that, and for just to be, that should be an easy, natural thing to say in any scenario, really, I think, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, so there you go, there's my...
Thanks, Neil. You just gone off screen now. Are you back? One moment. You just went off for a minute. Thanks so much for saying that from a personal perspective as well. I think everybody in the creative arts scene generally, it's a double-edged sword, because we're both adaptable, generally speaking, if you're a creative, but also, of course, there's that bipolar thing that also goes with creativity. When 1 minute you're up here, the next minute you're down there. And so I really appreciate you saying that. I think also this sort of situation where we're able to connect, even though remotely, with people. And I know it's a pain in the arse mostly being online a lot and not really being able to see somebody in the flesh. Fortunately, I'm dual based, which is why I'm able to be here now rather than in the UK. It's really great to be able to do that. I know there's a lot of mental health initiatives as well. There's a delegate who was here last year called Lena, who's also been doing a mental health initiative from Password Production, I think that is. And there are resources online for people to be able to interact and get help with that side of things. Does anyone else want to say anything on that at the moment online?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, actually.
Yeah, sure.
I think what COVID's done is it's given everyone an opportunity to really look at their work-life balance. As sort of Michael mentioned earlier, you know, he spends quite a lot of time, as I do, traveling around the world, attending events. I have a family back at home. I've got a young daughter, and the great thing that's happened in the last 6 months is I've got to spend so much quality time with both my wife and my family. Now, as we're looking towards maybe a phased rejoining of work, I don't want to work in the office 45 hours a week. I don't see the point. I know I do it remotely from my house. I think, just to sort of bring in a little bit on the previous question, I think the one thing that we aren't able to do online, or I certainly haven't been able to experience it properly, is networking. And the great thing that you get at all of the events that everyone produces here is the networking. And it's often overlooked. that sort of close contact where you can walk up to somebody and just sort of say, hello, what do you do? How are you? You miss that online, and that's something that, as these events move on, probably into the year, maybe still being online, is to try and counter that, try and fix that. And I think that the first person that comes up and fixes that is going to make an awful lot of money, but also is going to provide a really useful service to every single event that ever runs, because you just miss that human interaction. That's the one thing I have missed. But as I say, that work-life balance now, I'm going to look at it objectively and in a different way than I did 6 months ago.
Cool.
That's really good points. That networking thing is quite essential. I mean, it's really nice being here today and seeing people in the flesh, and you might bump into someone, literally, even by accidentally not socially distancing, and say, oh, who are you, what are you doing? And then you get the classic looking, trying to work out what it says on your badge. And then if you're not too mellow, then you can work out who the heck you're talking to. So that's a really good point, actually. Just to bring this sort of full circle, obviously, I said right at the beginning of this particular session that we try and avoid Brexit where possible, but obviously, along with COVID, and this is about the UK music scene, we know there's going to be an impact. I am covering that in another session later, as I said, but what I'd like to ask everyone now, or like you to reiterate, is that the UK as a scene, and as quite a diverse scene in many ways, it could be better in some ways, of course, particularly gender balance, how open the UK music scene is to international artists. I know it's sort of said a lot, but I'd like your quick views between you, what you think, and how things are going to be so open after the end of this year and maybe as things move forward. Stunned silence again.
I'll do it really quickly on recorded music. Very open, always has been, always will be. It's obviously different. There's different problems in live, obviously, but for recorded music, most of the streaming stores tend to be pan-European, if not global. Retail chains in the UK tend to stock a variety of releases. They tend not to categorize by country. So on recording music level, very open. Obviously, I think the colleagues in live may have a different view on certain aspects of it, but I think the British public as a whole, the music buying public, are extremely eclectic, very open, and always looking for something new, and tend not to that much care where it comes from. I mean, if you'd have told me 15 years ago that the biggest band in the UK at the moment is, 7, 8 guys from Korea, BTS, I wouldn't have believed you. They're possibly now the biggest band in the world, and very much driven from a whole set of UK fans that really just like their music and really don't care where they're from, just like them because they like the sound, they like the style they've got.
Thanks. Neil, in Wales, generally speaking, within the Welsh music scene, which I actually know quite well, how open do you feel Welsh scene is generally to international artists?
Open to international artists? Well, I mean, that's kind of like I was saying before, that's one of the, the basic things that we try and achieve with the Focus Wales, with the conference, the showcase rather, sorry. So, we've always wanted to maintain the attitude of Wales being open and welcoming to people, and as a nation that wants to sort of reach out and share our music with other countries and vice versa, so we've always, from the beginning, we've been doing it for 10 years now as well. So but from the beginning, we've always wanted, showcase artists from other countries and opened up applications internationally. And then, we host partner showcases with a lot of Canadian partners, but also Korea, Taiwan, and Austria as well. We would have done an Austrian music export showcase that's focused this year, which hopefully we're just going to do that next year now instead. So as far as we're concerned, I think international relationships. I know it might not be quite what you're asking here, but from our sort of business side of things, I guess the international relationships are very important to us. From and always have been from the outset. But from a cultural side of things as well, we it's like, and not to confuse it, like we're not like a government organization. It's like we just want to do this. Like me and the guy who founded it, we used to be in a band and we wanted to do this. And we were lucky enough to play internationally a few times at like showcase festivals. Didn't know what we were doing or why we were there probably, but we did learn something from it, and it sort of helped to shape what we do now. And that just the importance and the idea of that kind of even just the experience of being able to travel to another country and play music is it can be such a a huge kind of for a creator, for an artist, so and it's from that sort of core that we've always felt that was like a really important element to what we do. And then obviously building on that in the macro sense, as far as Wales the nation is concerned, building the presence of Wales as a place where there's sort of brilliant creativity in music. We can achieve that by inviting other brilliantly creative musical people to play in our bit of the world as well.
That's great. That's exactly what I was asking about, relationships. Because, I mean, relationships are so important, but actually music crossing borders, as it's very obviously it's a language we can all understand, then it's more important than anything, really, that creates the relationship between peoples and also via the creative arts. I mean, in particular, Adam, with Great Escape, I presume that the plans upcoming are as varied as ever, and have you got any particular focuses for next year?
Yeah, just to put the event on.
That is so succinct and perfect.
That's the main focus, is just to get the event out the door.
Yeah.
But it's the tough one. I mean, we work with, I don't know, 25 different export offices. We have about 35 plus countries represented. I mean, the pandemic has taken a lot of government's money away and channeled it into other areas. So whereas before, we had Korea as our showcase lead country partner, we work heavily with Australia, we work heavily with France and Switzerland. You don't know if those countries are going to have their budgets cut because of COVID, because it's been redirected to fight the pandemic. So fingers crossed, they'll be back next year and we'll be able to showcase the event. Who knows if they'll be able to travel next year? Bands coming out of the US. I mean, that's one country that's handled the pandemic amazingly badly. And air bridges and stuff like that. Will we be able to have artists from America and Australia? So yeah, maybe the event will be a little bit more UK focused, maybe a bit more. We'll have more artists from Scotland and more artists from Australia and the countries that are able to travel. I think, I'd like to think one of the good things to come out of the pandemic is that, people, that are here are engaging with the government and explaining to the government how much money the music sector, the live industry, brings in to the economy in the country, how many people it employs, and they're the sort of things that excite a Tory government. Money is the only thing that's going to excite a Tory government. So I just think, going into Brexit and being in a pandemic and being able to have the ears of a Tory government, I think I'd like to think that that's a good thing. So whenever they do the trade negotiations, they'll have a broader picture of what's at stake and how much money and how many jobs are going to be affected and hopefully not lost, but how much revenue the sector's worth. Because I think a lot of people in the government just see it as people in pubs drinking, or they don't see it as they don't see the cultural importance of it. They just think that people like Adele and 1975 and those kind of artists just appear from nowhere. So I'd like to think that the Tory government are motivated by money, and they are now fully aware of how much money the music industry brings in, and that can only be a good thing. So
I definitely echo that thought in more than ways than one. We've got 5 minutes left, or 4 minutes according to my timer. Anybody else got any questions in the room? It's your last chance. I know you've been waiting all morning for this moment. This could be a life-changing moment for somebody. They're all looking at me terrified with a few nervous smiles, guys. You can't maybe see them over there. Listen, I'd like to wrap this up now and say thanks very much to everybody for engaging in this. And obviously, I hope this has shown that the UK music scene is as open as it's ever been in many ways, irrespective of the problems that we've got at the moment, and there's a course for positivity. Music, after all, is the best source of therapy for me. I don't know for many other people, both online and in reality. So anything else you guys would like to say before we finish?
you can email me if you want to apply for the Great Escape.
You do realise this? We're currently looking at viewers of 11 million on the stream. So I'm lying.
It's not just the 3 people in the audience.
They're all desperately writing this down now, particularly the crew at the back.
I don't mind getting music.
Now, guys, I'd like to thank you all. That's Chris Tams from BPI. Thank you, Chris. Neil Thompson, who I forgot earlier. Sorry, Neil. Give us a wave. Yeah, you can still hear us. Thanks, buddy. Anastasia, hello, goodbye, and thank you very much indeed. Adam, thank you for your missives as well. And of course, Michael, thank you. And regards to your colleague over there in Scotland as well. You know what I mean. He likes whiskey and wears a kilt. Anyway, we'll say more about that later. So thanks once again. Thanks to the panel. And thank you. Cheers, guys. See you again.